It's Season 6, meaning Ranked is back. Here's a quick guide on who your Eternal Return main should be. What's poppin' everyone, it's your boy Levi, and this is going to be a quick new player's guide on how to pick your main. The video will focus mostly on playstyles. If you like to pick your characters based on appearance, you can view all the characters by going to the Collections tab on the main client. The first group of characters I want to get into are the Assassins. I personally think this is the hardest group of characters to pilot in Eternal Return. In traditional MOBAs, your assassin is there to kill the opposing team's carry, whether they trade their life for it or not. The goal is to make sure that they're dead. However, that doesn't really work the same way in a battle royale when you only get one life. Assassins in Eternal Return commit to a fight and try to kill their target before they get a chance to really fight back. They're left vulnerable after a kill usually. Assassins can be divided into the one-shotters and then the divers. Bianca, Hedgen, and Celine are the one-shotters. All these characters want to one-shot you, and if they don't, they're pretty much going to die trying to do so. Hedgen and Celine both require good spacing and spell rotations, but there's a little more leniency with Bianca. Her heals make her a lot less vulnerable if she misses her spells and they cover a long range. The divers are Daniel, Shoichi, and Alex. Daniel is a little bit harder than their average character in the sense that he's more punishable if not played properly. He does have a heal though that he can use when he dives inside a character. Shoichi and Alex are two characters that are often regarded as two of the hardest characters to pilot in Eternal Return. Both are seen as characters that are high skill, high reward, and they're both considered to be as good as the pilot is. If you get good at these characters, you're going to be scary in any lobby. Next up are the fighters, and this is the category I'd focus on if you're a beginner player. I'm going to be splitting the characters into two types, ones that primarily attack with basic attacks, and the other are spellcasters. The basic attacking fighters are Hyunwoo, Jackie, Eleven, Mai, Chiara, Yuki, Leon, Ekion, and Camillo. These characters have different weapons, but they all have similar playstyles. They all want to run you down and get on top of you. A lot of them also have some way of healing or shielding themselves too. Fighters are fairly easier characters compared to the rest of the cast. Hyunwoo can be played as both a basic attacking fighter and an amp assassin. Jackie, Eleven, Mai, Chiara, Yuki, and Leon want to run you down and stay on top of you as long as possible. For Ekion and Camillo, things are a little bit different. Ekion, you have to do some resource management and upgrade your weapon using a rare resource. Camillo, you have to weave in spells in between your basic attacks, making him a hybrid of a basic attacker and caster. And speaking of the casters, we have Magnus, Marcus, Luke, Lee Dai-Lin, Kathy, Lennox, Sua, Nikki, Jan, and Elena. We don't really have a tried and true tank class in Eternal Return, otherwise characters like Magnus, Sua, Jan, and Marcus would probably be in it. Similar to the basic attacking characters, the casters also want to get on top of you, but they just want to use their abilities instead. Magnus and Marcus are your easy fighters. There's no hardcore gimmicks with them. Luke and Lee Dai-Lin have a little spice, whether it's Luke's upgrading or managing Lee Dai-Lin's alcohol intake, but they're all pretty straightforward. Kathy and Lennox both require multiple spell rotations, but aren't anything too crazy either. Next we have Sua and Nikki. These aren't overly difficult characters either, but they do have abilities that you need to watch what the enemy is doing. Sua has a spell shield, which you want to time when you're about to get hit by a CC ability from an enemy. Nikki has a parry, and you want to use that on incoming attack. Lastly, we have Jan and Elena, also not overly difficult, but more challenging than the rest. These two both have abilities that need to be used in conjunction with other abilities. Jan likes to use his W in conjunction with his ult, and Elena wants to manage her freeze gauge. Next up is what I consider to be the hardest type of characters, the mages. Mages typically tend to be the easiest class in games, but in Eternal Return, I think they're slightly below assassins in difficulty. I'm going to break them into burst mages and control mages, but there's a bit of crossover for each character. I just grouped them up this way to make it easier. Your burst mages are mages that want to throw out a spell rotation and take out a large chunk of your health bar. These characters are Ava, Shukai, Zahir, Barbara, Nathapon, Fiora, Adela, and Adina. All these mages typically have a bread and butter combo. Shukai has a minigame on his passive where he gets the damage by cooking food. Fiora, Adela, and Adina just have multiple versions of this combo and can use them in different situations. Control mages try to manipulate spaces using their CC and longer range spells. This isn't to say that they lack damage, as I'm sure we've all been one-shot by a late game Sicela before. The control mages are Sicela, Tia, Emma, and Adriana, but as I said, the burst mages can be carried over here as well. Sicela is the easiest of the four, and just make sure to time your bubble to avoid taking damage with your ult. Tia and Emma, you have to be conscious of your spell rotations. Tia's color combinations have different effects based on the colors used, and Emma's ultimate changes based on what ability was used with it. Adriana, you have to be pretty good with skill shot accuracy and spacing. Next are our Marksmen. These characters typically have more basic kits to understand and revolve around using their right clicks rather than their abilities. Let's talk about the long range attackers first. We have Aya, Isel, Art, William, and Nadine. Since some of the characters have different weapon types, and this is a new player's guide, I'll be focusing on their most basic weapon. Let's start with Assault Rifle Aya and Assault Rifle Isel. These are the two most basic characters to learn in the game. Aya is probably the most simple character in the game with her kit. I've had some games where I've only had to use one ability on her. You can check out my guide for her in the card above. Isel is a little bit more in-depth with his traps, but is overall super simple too. Next is Heart. She's a little more complicated with having evolution points, but you have a pretty good escape with E, and if you ever get caught out, you can use your ultimate to reset the fight. William and Nadine are a little bit harder than the rest. William requires good spacing and good reaction time. You want to be able to slide to your baseballs to avoid getting hit by abilities. Nadine requires you to have decent knowledge of where hunts are. Most of her damage comes from her passive, a mechanic that increases her damage based on hunts. This allows her to infinitely scale. Your short range marksmen are Bernice and Chloe. Bernice is a very simple sniper character. His downside is that he's immobile for a ranged character and wants to get on top of you like he's a melee. He is really good at chasing people down, however. Chloe requires you to play around her doll, Nina. A good Chloe will be able to manipulate Nina's movements to maximize your damage output. If you are learning her, she takes a little bit to get the hang of because you have to manage 2 health bars rather than 1. Lastly are your hybrids and mid-rangers. These characters are all a hybrid of 2 different playstyles or have something going on that doesn't put them in any other list. These characters are Rio, Razi, Jenny, Sylvia, Felix, Laura, and Aiden. Rio has 2 bows that let her differentiate between a short-range basic attacker and a long-range basic attacker. Long range is about keeping space, while short range is about kiting. Razi is a mid-range marksman who likes to fight like a melee against range and a range against melees. When fighting a melee, she looks to kite and keep distance, but when fighting at range, she's about gap closing and getting up close and personal. Card above for my Razi guide. Jenny switches back and forth between a basic attacking character and an amp one-shot character. Currently I believe she's still a basic attacker, but I think we'll see Jenny make an amp return again. Sylvia's ultimate lets her ride her bike, which means she has a different set of abilities from on and off her bike. Off her bike, she likes keeping space like a typical ranged character, and uses her abilities to gain fuel. When she has enough fuel, she can hop on her bike and become a melee character. Sylvia also has a minigame in her kit that requires her to touch every zone, which can be a little daunting for newer players. Felix and Laura are next, and I want to talk about them together due to the nature of their passives. These are melee characters that both have a different style of basic attack when they have some space between their opponents in them. Felix is more basic, and it's just a double basic attack. Laura's requires her meter to be full, which she can charge with movement and E. Lastly for her hybrids, we have Aiden. Aiden also switches between melee and ranged form when he gets charged. He also has a lot of resets due to the charges, and his abilities have to be used in conjunction with each other, leading to a lot of combos. He's more difficult to play than the other hybrids, but you can pull off a lot of outplays on this character. Rounding out the list, I briefly want to mention the supports, Priya and Johan. Both these characters are abysmal to use in solos. Johan is pretty good in team modes, and Priya is working her way up to be better in team modes. She just has a few issues being worked out. Johan provides buffs and healing for his teammates, while Priya provides a lot of CC. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much if you made it to this point. I hope this helps you pick your Eternal Return main or inspires you to try out some other characters you haven't touched before. Let me know in the comments who looks the most interesting. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more Eternal Return content, and I'll see you in the next one.